Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Catholic Education Foundation, podcast number 26. Our guests this week are Amy Fears, the principal of Saint Raphael School, and as always, Mr. Rich Lechleiter, the president of the Catholic Education Foundation. Now, Rich, we got a tough one to follow up here. Angelo was fabulous last month.
Amy's up for it. She's up for it,
I think Amy's up for it. But, man, I tell you what, our one last month with Angelo has been gangbusters. It's done really, really well. So hopefully people keep listening and keep sharing that pretty amazing story there.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I think what we learned at the foundation is to feature people in our schools, right? Yeah. Whether it be people like Amy and some of our other principals we had on, but also feature some of our kids from different schools on what's going on there. Yeah, and I think his message was incredibly powerful.
So for podcast number 26, we want to take a deeper dive into the academic achievement in Catholic schools and why we are different from everyone else, right? So we also want our audience to learn more about some of the standardized tools that are used to measure how our students are progressing. So, Amy, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's start with you. So you're a Catholic school kid, right?
I am.
A teacher and now an elementary school principal. Tell us about yourself and your beginnings.
So I am the daughter of a football coach. And with that, my dad spent a good amount of time coaching at the University of Kentucky, then the University of Louisville, was where he kind of was at during our high school years, which is what brought me to Louisville. So we moved a little bit while I was younger, and then he continued his career. But once we stayed in Louisville, this was home. This was where our family was. This was where we wanted to settle. And so it's an amazing place to be.
And tell us about your Catholic school journey here a little bit, because you've seen a few of our Catholic schools.
I have. And one of the things that always amazes me, and I've also had the opportunity to see some Catholic schools in different states. The amazing thing about Catholic education is regardless of what school you're in, your prayers are the same, your faith is the same. It doesn't matter if you're new, the faith isn't. And knowing and walking into somewhere, when we moved here to Louisville, it was towards the middle of my freshman year. And I will never forget, being at Assumption and knowing, okay, I've got this.
This is somewhat familiar.
It is.
Okay, gotcha.
It is. And, things have kind of come full circle with the fact that we would celebrate Mass at Assumption at Saint Raphael.
Right.
And so it's just been a great journey that I've been privileged to be part of.
So what are some moments during those Catholic school years and your experiences that have led you to a career in education?
So I have always wanted to be an educator. I've come from a long family of educators. You've got Jody Schaefer, who's taught at Assumption for a really long time. Sure. My uncle is at Bethlehem High School right now. My Aunt Carol Nord has spent a good amount of time in education. So growing up, I've got several cousins that are also teachers. We are all very much educators.
The educator family.
Yes, very much. Very much so.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about kind of the few stops you're at. So I know you're at Nativity a little bit, and then St. Michael, right?
Yes.
Before you got it to St. Raphael. Let's start with Nativity and St. Michael. Talk to us about your days there.
Yeah, so actually, Angelo, I had the great privilege of getting to know him. He was one of our students when I was there. He did the Student Technology Leadership Club with me. His group actually from regionals got to move on to state. And so those that aren't familiar with Nativity, it's a special place. It really is.
Yeah,
and Ronnie Witherspoon is currently the principal there, a dear friend, a remarkable leader. Nativity they're in great hands with her.
Let me ask you about Angelo. Was he special even as a fifth grader?
Absolutely,
he
was.
You could just tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was, he was a child that even at such a young age, it's like,
yeah, there's something about him.
I can't wait to see what God does with him.
Yeah.
You can tell. He's doing great with him.
Absolutely.
He's doing great with him.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, let's talk about your days at St. Michael.
So Nick and I, both of us are products of Catholic education, and the single best choice that we made for our family was Catholic education. We became parishioners at St. Michael. That's where we chose to send our children when the time came, life was busy, working on a different school schedule. I had a different school schedule. Our oldest at the time was at St. X. The other two were at St. Michael. It was just hectic. Right. And so the opportunity to be where my boys were presented itself, and it was for the sake of life and making things easy. It was like, oh my goodness, this is a no-brainer.
Sure.
And so would have loved to have had more time at Nativity, but for convenience, being where the other two were just made sense. And so that's kind of what brought me there. And it's a phenomenal community. And that's one of the things that really our Catholic community, I've been at a lot of schools, and I've had the privilege to get to be and to get to see such great, amazing people. And that's what we are. Yeah. We're a family. Right. And, you show up for one another when things are rough. You celebrate when things are joyous. And that's what you get with Catholic education.
100%. It's all about the community. It really is. That's the difference.
Yeah, that is obviously the faith journey's different than other schools, but the sense of community built around faith is what really makes things different and better.
All right. So, Amy, now you have a new gig as principal at Saint Raphael. What propelled you to seek the role of principal?
So I was pretty comfortable at St. Michael, had been there, had been a parishioner since 2006. It's where my boys were, and just felt this calling that I was being asked to do more. Kind of tried to ignore it a little bit, but sometimes, that voice of, gets louder. And so happened to be actually at Mass at Saint Raphael. We had various different things going on, and where we were at for the boys' sports or whatever we had going on, it landed us at Saint Raphael for Mass. And Father Tony, during his homily, spoke about, Jesus being the center of our heart, and are we allowing him to drive us? And it was just a goosebump moment of, I think he's talking to me right now, and I think this means, I've been feeling like he's been asking me to do more and wanting me to grow and to be challenged. And so here I am, Lord. Tell me what it is that you want, and I'm going to do my best to try to answer that call. And shortly thereafter, the ad for the position at Saint Raphael was in the Record. I felt like it was speaking to me. Wow, it all just it did. It really, really did. So
it's real too. It's real. It's not imagined. The calling's real. A divine calling is a real thing.
Yeah, that's pretty special. That's awesome. Well, and I know St. Raphael's lucky to have you. Let's talk about that community a little bit. It's a very, very special place.
Absolutely. I did not know prior to arriving there that we have families that come to us from 30 different zip codes.
Wow.
That's great.
It is.
Wow. That's really, really cool. And I would assume Assumption has a little bit to do with that, right? But I would think, man, that's hard. I would venture to guess that not too many Catholic schools have that.
It is a very amazing just sense of, it's Louisville. We are representing all the various different neighborhoods and areas within Louisville, and that's a pretty cool thing to be part of.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing to be part of.
Well, Raphael, ever since its beginning, has always been kind of a special parish in my view, and I've been there many times, either in the school or at the church. There's a really, I would say, unique community there. It's unique and it's strong. Yeah. And that's why people like being there. People like me like being there.
Right. Yeah. There's a synergy there that you don't necessarily feel everywhere. How about enrollment, Amy? What's enrollment look like for St. Raphael right now?
Yeah, so currently for our, we also have a preschool. We have 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and then we go up to 8th grade.
It's a farm club.
So with all of our students all together, we are at 427. Okay. And that has, we've had 11 new students since school started this year. We are continuing to grow our enrollment. Right. Wow. We opened enrollment for new families on Monday. 99% of our current families have already registered for next year. So that's phenomenal. Wonderful. Yes. And, we're growing. We will likely be on a wait list for kindergarten, preschool. It looks like 2nd grade, possibly 6th grade. So it is definitely a school where we're growing. That's fantastic. We're continuing to do great things.
School, there's every school has its own history, right? But this, I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, things were struggling at the school. I think the enrollment was around maybe 300.
I think it was even.
Was it less than
I
that?
think it was.
Yeah, I might have a 2 on it. And I think the preschool was closed for a while or something. I can't remember all the details, but it was on the decline, basically.
Oh,
yeah. And Father Shane took over as pastor. And there's a new principal, Jill Tabor, came in, who was, I think, a resource coordinator. And they kind of retrofitted what I'll call the school board. Julie Baum chaired it, by the way.
Julie's a big part of that,
and,
sure.
Then things started to turn, right? And all of a sudden, particularly the last 2 years, things have taken off.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at the enrollment numbers, really taken off at Raphael. So, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And secondly, it does speak to the product of how we're forming our kids. And it speaks to the community in loud volume, in my view.
Well, the Catholic Education Foundation has a big impact there, too, right? I mean, so the foundation does a lot of work for students and families at Saint Raphael.
Yeah, we do a ton. I think, if I remember the numbers right, this past fall, you said there's 427 kids. We awarded scholarships to 133 of them, and the total dollar value of that was over $250,000. So we're part of the solution there. We're not all of it, obviously, but we're doing, I think, our share to make sure that anybody wants to go to Raphael can do so. Yeah. So I'm super proud of it.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
So Amy, let's get into why Catholic schools are the best, right? Let's focus on how they achieve such amazing academic success across the board. How is it that's done?
Accountability. I think that when you know and you are rooted in a Catholic identity of knowing that all of the children that come to us, they've been created in the image of God. They all have gifts and talents. It's our privilege to get to take those children and to get to see what those gifts are and to grow those gifts. And we're going to hold kids accountable because a great sacrifice has been made for all of us. When Jesus has died on the cross for us, that's a great sacrifice. So we've got a lot to do for that. And, we're going to hold our kids accountable. We have high expectations, but we're going to take them there. We're going to show them the way, and then we're going to hold them accountable.
What a great answer.
No, it's all of those elements of discipline, accountability, respect. And when you mold all those ingredients together, that is Catholic education. And it, again, and I don't mind saying it, it's the best educational experience on earth. There's none better because of all those things coming together, not only to form a kid, but ultimately to transform their lives. That's what happens.
So I think there's a lot of parents out there that don't understand some of the more intentional steps taken in our schools to measure the academic process and progress of our students. Amy, talk a little bit more about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so there are lots of things that educators use to make sure that, first off, that what we are doing, that we are growing our students. That's our goal, right? We want to grow them spiritually. We want to grow them also academically. And so we want to make sure that we are taking a look at where they're at and meeting them where they are and then growing them from there. And there are lots of different ways for us to assess that. One of the things that all of the schools, all of us that are kindergarten through 8th grade, we have MAP testing. Our high schools, there are 5 high schools that currently implement MAP testing, and it's really a great opportunity that allows us information into where our kids are. And for those that aren't familiar with MAP testing is a SMART test that adjusts based on how students are answering questions. So the more questions that a student gets right, the harder they become. And so it really gives us a good understanding of where a child is at.
Hang on, Amy. So let me see if I understand you correctly here. So every test is individualized for that particular student.
It is.
And so depending on what you had done the previous year, that's kind of where you start with your particular MAP testing, correct?
Yes.
And then as you're taking the test, if you are starting to answer too many questions correctly, they get more difficult.
They do.
And then it kind of normalizes back to, okay, well, now we've seen where you've missed some of the difficult ones. Now we're going to give you some more of the easier ones.
And that's one of the things that we work really hard to try to explain to our kids, right? Because that can be hard when you're taking a test and you're not knowing some of the things on them.
Hey, now, we haven't done this.
Right. And so, and we do, the goal and with how MAP is set up is that you kind of want to get at that 50% where, that's kind of that sweet spot. And so for some of these students that are getting all of these grade appropriate things correct, they are being asked questions for things that they haven't seen before. Right. And so, that's where as the teacher, you're just do the best that you can. Yeah. And it does. It also, as an educator, it gives you an opportunity to see what your kids are ready next for and to be able to truly differentiate some of the things that are happening in the classroom because you've got instant data. Within 24 hours of administering that MAP growth, you can see how a child did. So we're getting ready to start. We start next week with our winter testing. And I always get, I always laugh because it's like our teachers are waiting for that 24-hour mark to be able to get on there to see how their kids are doing. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you administer a test in the fall. How many times a year do you do it?
So the Archdiocese has fall and spring. There are some schools that also do winter testing.
They do a third.
Saint Raphael is participating in winter testing because it's just giving us additional information that allows us to kind of continuously measure where our kids at, how they're doing. And so, when one of the things that we're also looking at in addition to achievement is growth. Are our students growing? Because we want to make sure that, those high achievers are also growing as well. And so that data that you have in your hands is something that really allows you to kind of get into the nitty-gritty to see, okay, our Catholic schools, we follow the Archdiocese of Louisville's curriculum framework. And so with looking at those standards, it gives us specifics so that we can say, okay, 30% of my class, they've already mastered what we're getting ready to do next. I need to shift this a little bit so that we're not wasting some of our time. And it gives you very helpful information for planning and for making sure that you're able to give students what they need when they need it.
Wow, that's exciting.
So so do you also, like when the winter test is over, do you go back and compare that to what the student did in the fall, for example?
We do. So, you have there's so many different ways. There are so many spreadsheets and so many various different things. And Christine Kelly from the Archdiocese is phenomenal. After we had our fall testing at Saint Raphael, we invited her out to work with our teachers to make sure that they were understanding how to interpret and read the data and also able to understand some of the new things that had just come out. There were different reports that weren't available last year that we wanted to make sure that our teachers had the ability and understanding and knowledge to use so it could impact their teaching. And so there's so much information that MAP provides us with. And it's just a great tool that really helps us to check our progress and to check how we're doing as educators to make sure that what we are knowing our kids need to be able to do, that they're able to do that.
So didn't it used to be called Terra Nova? Am I thinking
so
right?
That was the testing that was used prior to MAP. And then
that's a different kind of test.
It is different. I think back in 2017, Nativity Academy decided to kind of make a transition. It was my first year there. I think I've got my years correct. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I've got that off. But I think it was 2017. And then that following year when I went to St. Michael, we implemented MAP testing. And so we were somewhat of a guinea pig.
Gotcha.
And then the Archdiocese as a whole started doing it after that.
So let me ask you another question. As a parent, so what's a parent see from the MAP test? What do they get?
So you have different schools have the ability to give different reports out. What we choose to give our families is it gives our families a RIT score. What that RIT score is it is a score that is measuring students across their entire journey. So what that means is if I have a kindergartner and my child's first MAP assessment in the fall, I have this score. I'm able to see the continuous journey of how my child is growing from the time they're in kindergarten until the time they're in 8th grade. And so that's pretty impactful data to be able to have and to be able to see and to be able to know. And so I'm able to know, okay, if I've got, a child that, their RIT score is at a 215, that might be a score where, okay, usually your kids that are a few years older than that, that's kind of where they're at. So more than likely that child's going to be at a higher achievement level because of that. So it's very helpful because of how you're able to interpret that data for so many years, and it's consistent.
This is a fabulous tool. I mean, my kids are way beyond this, obviously, but it's the more I hear about what we're doing around MAP testing, the more encouraged I am about measuring progress more quickly and more often in a really objective way. And I think it's just another example of why our kids are progressing so well in Catholic schools. Just one example.
Well, in a very individualized way, too, right? Knowing who's the high achievers, who may be a little bit born behind in this area, and how to help everybody. Not just, it used to be you taught one lesson to the entire class, no matter if somebody's getting it or if they're not getting it. Everybody's in it. That's when I was in Catholic school. That's kind of what happened, right? But now it's very individualized to where you're the ones that can excel, they have the tools to do so. The ones that need more help, they have the tools there for that as well. And I think MAP testing helps that tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it gives you such an insight on where each individual child is and what it is that they're ready for next. And that information, that's so valuable as an educator, and it helps you with your planning. It helps you to understand your scope and sequence of what's next. And from a leadership perspective, it lets us take a look of what as a school are maybe some of our opportunities for growth that we need to spend some time on. And it helps us to make sure that we're not missing any gaps, that we're not missing anything, that our kids are going to leave us with everything that they need to be successful.
Yeah, it's a smart test. And it adapts with each student, and it adapts with the school, and everything. It's really exciting stuff.
How many categories are there? Like verbal, math? I mean, how many different? Is it broken up like that?
So there is math and reading, and then there is also language acquisition. And that's kind of your grammar and such. Science is offered, but at Saint Raphael, we do not participate in that. So we have our kindergarten and first graders just participate in math and reading growth. And then we have from 3rd grade to 7th grade, they participate also in that grammar piece. And then our 8th graders for math, they do an algebra assessment. So theirs is a little bit different. So, I mean, it truly is the graphs that NWEA provides with being able to look and see where your kids are. You can get lost in there for hours because there's such helpful information. Wow. It can group students by where, what they're ready to learn next.
Amy, what does a parent need to know? So to your point on you can get lost in it, you can also get lost having no idea what you're looking at. I've been one of those parents where I've gotten those scores back and been like, is this good? Is this bad? Are we behind? Are we ahead? I just don't know. As a parent, what do I need to be concerned about, focused on?
Well, one of the things is, when MAP growth goals are met, that means your achievement's staying the same. Because sometimes that can be really hard as a parent, right? Because, well, gosh, this percentile stayed the same. Are they not? No, that doesn't mean that. That means that goal has been met, and so they are being able to kind of keep the pace.
So they're on the right path.
They're on
absolutely,
track. Yeah, they're
absolutely. But that can be a confusing thing. If I'm as a parent and I see that my child's in the 72nd percentile, and then later they're still in the 72nd percentile, I might be thinking, oh gosh, they're not growing. No, that's not the case. That means they are keeping pace because as we are progressing in the year, our children are expected to know more.
Okay, that makes sense. What advice would you give parents that think that, okay, I'm not quite understanding what's going on here. I'm a little bit concerned. What should I do?
Yeah, so one thing that I always like to remind parents is while MAP is an amazing piece of information, it's only one data point. And so you've got some of your kids that yeah, you have a bad day, had a rough morning, a bad day. For some of our younger students, reading through that, having to take that can be hard for some of them. It can also be frustrating, just as we spoke earlier, when your questions, you've never seen some of this before. Right. And so helping them to remember that this is just one piece of information. It's a helpful piece of information, but it's just one data point. Talk to your child's teachers. If you've got questions and you're not sure what your child's scores mean, talk to your teachers. Talk to your school leader. They should very much be able to walk you through what that looks like and what those scores mean and how to interpret them.
Awesome. Pretty exciting stuff.
I love it. I really do. It's perfect.
Amy, thank you for kind of breaking all that down. I mean, this was one of our goals, is to really try to understand what MAP testing is. And I hope if you listen to that little section there of the MAP testing portion of this podcast, you're going to have a really good understanding of kind of what our students are doing within Catholic schools. So you've only been at Saint Raphael since the start of the fall term, is that correct?
So July 1st was my first official day.
Okay. So
congratulations.
If you look back at your days at St. Michael, since we're not going to hold you to the Saint Raphael piece since it's brand new, what kind of academic progress was made during your tenure there?
So one of the things that we worked really hard to do at St. Michael, and had a fabulous team that assisted with all of this, we were able to put some things in place last year regarding RTI, which is a response to intervention, which means, okay, here's where our kids are. We have some students that are ready for extensions. We have some that might need interventions. We need to make sure that those things are happening so that regardless of where a child is, we're growing everyone. And that was, we took a lot of time last year working with our curriculum, determining what those essential standards were. We also worked with our teachers. We took several teachers. The Archdiocese of Louisville was phenomenal and was able to support us so that we could have some training on RTI. They hosted a conference as well back in the fall that several of our teachers all across the Archdiocese were able to go to understand what that looks like and what that process is. And so that was one of the things that I feel that last year we made great strides towards, and that we were really able to start getting into the specifics of making sure that all of our students were able to get what they needed.
Awesome. Great answer. So you and your husband, Nick, obviously made the choice to send your kids to Catholic schools. What would you say to a young parent who's trying to figure out the right educational pathway for their kids?
I would say to pray about it. We have so many great schools here in the Archdiocese of Louisville. While I'm partial to where I'm at, I also know we have such amazing things to offer at other schools. And it's really an opportunity to be part of something larger than yourself. And the best gift that Nick and I have been able to provide to our boys is their Catholic education. It is, a few years ago, Nick was diagnosed with leukemia, and it was right in the midst of COVID, and our Catholic community showed up for us, and not just the adults. Being able to see at the time our oldest was a senior at St. X. I mean, his friends are checking on Gregory, who is a 7th grader, and just taking care of each other. And then the brotherhood that's St. X is a gift. And so taking a look at seeing how even when they were teeny tiny and starting that, it truly is a family. And I hope that all of the work that CEF does can continue so that we can allow more people the opportunity to really be able to see what we're doing, because it's amazing.
It's pretty powerful.
Amen.
It's pretty powerful. The community shows up for the good and the bad, right?
It absolutely does.
And that's the powerful piece of being part of a Catholic community. All right, Amy. So I got to ask, you're obviously a pretty amazing leader. So what are your plans for making Saint Raphael School even better?
So I have been working really hard of trying to listen to what God is calling me to do. A lot of times I think we get so busy in the day-to-day events that it's really important to stop and reflect and say, is this what you want, God, or is this what I want? And so trying to regularly have that opportunity to hear him so that, these are his kids and I'm just blessed enough to get to be with them every day. And so I want to make sure that I'm doing right by them and asking him regularly to give me the tools that I need so that I can be for them what it is that they need me to be is part of my daily prayer.
It's powerful.
Very.
It's powerful.
Very.
Amy, from all of us here, thank you so much for your tremendous sacrifice and commitment to Catholic school students and their families. Obviously, listening to you talk, I really get the sense it's a true divine calling for you. What a pleasure it was for you to be with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
And Rich, at the Catholic Education Foundation.
The answer is yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to podcast number 26. We'll be back again next month with another engaging guest.